Welcome to today's episode of Confessions of a Cleaning Business Owner. And today we're going to be talking about learning to clean like a professional. It's obvious, isn't it? We should all be able to clean like professionals.
Yeah, where did we all learn?
Isn't that the problem? Where do you learn? And I guess our job on this podcast is hopefully to blow this lid wide open today and go, right, let's start learning what do professionals do very differently to your home cleaners. So, yeah, what do they do differently, Diane?
Well, I suppose they educate themselves, hopefully, and that's partly what this podcast is going to be about, isn't it? About learning about cleaning safely, but also cleaning methods more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm going to start with an acronym, CHAT. And when I was practicing, I got the C-H-A-N-T the wrong way around. So as a professional cleaner, one of the things to learn is actually how are we going to clean and how are we going to clean effectively? Because as cleaners, a lot of us charge per hour, or even if you charge per job, you do want to do it quite fast. You want to be efficient. So there are 4 different elements that feed into this. So hopefully I can get them in the right order. C, which is our chemical action. So we're going to come on to this and dwell time, but every chemical takes a certain amount of time to work, and that chemical action can do the work for you. So rather than you sit there scrubbing, if the chemical does it, like degreaser might break something down, it takes work away from you. And then we've got heat. Now, heat makes a big difference to cleaning, and I think in carpet cleaning, they quote it as for every 11 degree increase that you go up, it halves the cleaning time. So that's why they use hot water extraction. The same's true on ovens. And even if you use these home cleaners, they say, well, heat the oven first. And the same's true if you're doing your washing up, washing your dishes. You use hot water because things clean faster, the soaking process happens faster. We use heat.
And we've probably all been in scenarios where we've gone, oh, there's no hot water, but that, you can still clean, can't you?
And you go, well, yes, theory. But then, so basically, every one of these steps or every part of our chat speeds it up or makes it more efficient. Then we've got agitation. Okay, so you can scrub. Okay, so you can agitate, you can scrub. It's like doing your dishes. You have to take your scrubbing brush, washing up brush, or anything to it. And then finally, time. You have to, some things just take time. You can leave it to soak over time. And the interesting thing about these 4 elements of cleaning is actually you can change them. And every time you change it, it gets faster, it gets more efficient. You either add time, so you give it more time to soak. You add heat, so you warm it up and it goes faster. You agitate, so you scrub it more. Or you use a different chemical to use a chemical process. And when you're looking at this, and a lot of cleaners go, well, how do I clean this? Or how do I do that? And I'm going, well, the answer to this might be agitation rather than a chemical solution. And a lot of customers go, well, what chemicals did you use? And we're going, well, it's not about the chemicals. It's about scrubbing, or it's about I left it to soak. How many times can you leave something to soak, come back to it 20 minutes later, and it's a doddle?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you need all 4? Do you need all 4 sort of elements to clean properly, or can you pick some that are going to work?
You need an understanding, because when you look at your own cleaning processes and you look at it, for example, floor cleaning. So if you've just got a normal floor, you can just use a bit of moisture, a little bit of a chemical. It's not going to do an awful lot. And you can, have a bit of a wipe over. You're not really scrubbing. Whereas if you're doing an after builders clean, then we need to really start looking at this. We go, okay, we do need hot water. We do need it to soak. We need it to soak for 20 minutes. And actually, what chemicals are we using? Are we using your bog standard floor cleaner, or are we going more of a, are we looking more of a pH? You're looking more down your alkaline one if you're going more on stone and tiles and things. This is when we really start to look at it. On your average cleaning, you can probably get away with not knowing about this. And I think this is why domestic cleaners don't always know this. Whereas you start doing carpet cleaning, oven cleaning, any kind of specialist, and you have to know about this.
Do you think there's an element of we almost naturally use this acronym without realizing it, but when it comes to actually training and doing it professionally, that's the difference, because you actually understand why you're doing it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this really helps empower you. Once you understand this, when a customer goes, will you do this for me? And you go, oh, what a pointless, stupid thing to do. And now you can explain to them why what they're asking for just isn't going to work. And you say, do we do it naturally? How many times have you been told cleaning's just common sense?
Yeah. It's not very common though, is it?
It's not. And the number of times when I go to my cleaners, okay, and I'll give you a really good example of this. You can go to greasy, if you're doing an end of tenancy and you've got greasy cupboard fronts or greasy tiles, let's say, where you can either use a degreaser, you can spend all day scrubbing, or you can get a steamer on it and really heat it up as well. And so it's kind of understanding that we have lots of different methods because we can use pretty much all of this. And I think that's the understanding, whereas my staff just go, oh, and they just start scrubbing. I'm going, no, stop scrubbing, right? We'll either steam it, we'll either use the chemicals. Don't just scrub. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and also the scrubbing, the agitation can actually damage surfaces, can't it? So sometimes that's not the solution. And I don't know if you've seen stainless steel hobs that have been scrubbed, and they're lovely and scratched, aren't they? So it's not always the solution.
Had they just been left to soak, and a lot of people, and again, I'm going to say my staff will do this as well, say they will spray degreaser all over a hob. And I'm like, why? Why are we spraying degreaser all over this hob? You could leave it to soak with just warm water, just a little bit of warm water, and that stain would come off. It's just a bit of stuck on tomato paste or whatever. And I think they're so used to applying a chemical that you go, is that the right thing? Or that will work, all of them will work. But actually, let's think it through and go, what's the best method for this?
And I suppose that's the difference here, isn't it, between, being a professional cleaner and being good at cleaning. They're not always the same thing, because that good at cleaning might take longer. It might damage the surface. You might remove that tomato paste, but you might also damage the hob in the process, or yourself if you're using too many chemicals.
And talking of damaging yourself, right? So this is the interesting one. And obviously, a lot of people saw the bleach rant and the last week's podcast, and we've done bleach. We've worked on bleach. So safety data sheets. Okay, I'll be honest. On the groups, when we started setting up Facebook groups about 4 years ago, no one had a clue really what safety data sheets were. They now seem to be spoken about, like it's expected that people know, but there are people that still don't know what a safety data sheet is.
Yeah, or if they do know what a safety data sheet is, they often don't have a clue where to get them from.
No, or what to do with it. So safety data sheet, so it used to be a manufacturer's safety data, so an MSDS or an SDS. So these have to be supplied by either the manufacturer or the reseller, and both of them should supply it to you. Even if you bought your chemical from Tesco's or Sainsbury's or B&M, we tested it out, they will supply the safety data sheet. What they do is they send you to a website where you can access that safety data sheet, but it is always available. Now, this is why I think it gets really interesting, because when a lot of domestic cleaners ask customers to supply their own products, well, that's all well and good, but actually by law, you have to have the safety data sheet. And because you're a professional, and by that I mean you are being paid for supplying a service, you are a professional, whether you like it or not, whether you're employed, self-employed, you are supplying a service for money. As soon as that happens, you now have legal obligations, right? And you have to have that safety data sheet. Okay. And particularly if you've got staff going into that environment, and even if they're self-employed, I'm sorry, but if you're putting them in there, you still have a legal responsibility for their safety. So, you can think, I don't have to do a risk assessment because they're not employed. Well, you do. We're all responsible. You have to do a risk assessment. And if you are putting them into a situation whereby they're exposed to dangerous chemicals because you don't know what the customer's supplying, then unfortunately you still do have a legal obligation there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you are supplying your own cleaning products, you just download the safety data sheets. You put them in a folder, you carry them around. You can either put them under your car seat, carry them around with you in the box or carrier where they should be, would be great. Or some people do have a digital version on their phone, as long as it's always accessible. You need to do that. By law, you have to have access to those safety data sheets.
And we actually had, just to interrupt, we had a case recently where somebody on one of the groups was saying that their chemical had spilled into their water bottle that they kept in the same container in the car. So they drank some of their chemical. I think it might have been Viacal. I can't remember what the actual chemical was, but they went to A&E because they'd swallowed some of this cleaning chemical. And I was, obviously the first question was, are you okay? But then the second question was, did you have some information for the medical professionals? And she did, which was fantastic, because it meant that they knew exactly what to do with the chemical that she'd ingested. So that's another one of the reasons why they're so important.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than, let's say, a customer's child comes across your chemicals, does something stupid, gets it on their skin. That customer's going to be panicking, going, give me the information. And if you're going, oh, hang on, let me get in contact with the manufacturer and hopefully they'll answer the phone. And no, you need that there and then. And if that child goes to hospital and anything has happened, and you're not supplying that safety data sheet, you're going to look awful. You're going to feel awful. Just get it done. It's a legal obligation anyway. So all you have to do is print them out. It's that simple. Yeah. You've got a range of chemicals you use, and this is one of the reasons why try and narrow it down. 7 to 10 chemicals should be enough for pretty much anyone. Like, I don't know any professional cleaning company that uses more than 10 chemicals, not for domestic cleaning. No. Maybe a bit different if you're doing deep cleaning or you start doing oven cleaning or carpet cleaning, but for general domestic cleaning, 10 max. And yet I see cleaners with, I've got 25 different products and I keep them all in my boot. But then if you had a crash in your car or a fire, imagine supplying those safety data sheets.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have 5 or 6. That's it now.
I think we're on 7. 7. Yeah, 7, I think we're on. So yes, safety data sheets. Now, if a customer wants to supply you with chemicals, that's great, but they will then, being the supplier of those chemicals, they then unfortunately will have a legal obligation to supply you with the safety data sheets. Now, one way you can get around this is you give the customer the list of chemicals that you would like them to supply. Then you have the safety data sheets, and then they just supply from that list. So you can get around it that way, and you hold the safety data sheets. But you are going to have to remember that if they come out with a different fragrance, a different dilution, a different color, like the safety data sheet changes every time. So you are going to have to be quite stringent with that. But this is one of the reasons why, if you are a professional cleaner, you should not be using whatever the customer decides to give you. You have no protection, you've got no training, you've got no safety. Why are you doing this to yourself? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and the products that the customer's buying are not designed to be used day in, day out. They're designed to be used once or twice a week, if that. The ones from the supermarket shelves, we've talked about this before, and they're not actually designed for you to use as a professional cleaner.
And I find it really not amusing. Flash lemon scented. It's a floor cleaner. Some people use it to spray and do bathrooms and goodness knows what. But you are supposed to use eye protection. If you're using that concentrate, so tipping it into a mop bucket, which is what a lot of people do, you're supposed to be using eye protection. It is really hazardous to the eyes. But you'd only know this if you read the safety data sheets. And this is a really common chemical, and people think because it's sold in supermarkets and B&M and all these places, it's safe. Not if you get it in your eyes, it's not.
Absolutely.
So yes, safety data sheets, all great fun. It's a fun podcast today, isn't it, Di?
Absolutely. So safety data sheets, what do we do with them apart from just storing them? Because they're not just for us to keep with the chemicals, are they?
No. So this is the part, nobody wants to do this next part. So people, I'll go, yeah, I do Kosh. What do you mean you do Kosh? What do you mean? I know all about Kosh. Okay, right. What do you know about Kosh? Right. So Kosh, let's make it really, really simple. There are 10. They simplified it, made about 10 rules of Kosh. Okay. And people go, I've looked through those. I've flipped through those. That's all well and good. Where the safety data sheets come in is that you should have done a chemical risk assessment on every product that you use. And the only way you're going to get the information to do those risk assessments on every product is from the safety data sheets. So they call it a Kosh assessment, right? But really it's a chemical risk assessment. It's the same as any other risk assessment. And people go, well, I just work for myself, so I don't need to do it. Well, unfortunately, yes, you do. it's over 5 staff where it needs to be written down, but you need to have done a risk assessment. And the only way you can have done a risk assessment is to have got those safety data sheets. So you need if you've got 5 staff, they have to be written down, and you've got to have a folder with all your risk assessments and your chemical risk assessments. But why would you not do a risk assessment on a product that you're planning to use to keep yourself safe? So yes, it's doing a risk assessment. So for example, if I was using Flash, again, I'm going to use poor Flash here. Flash made by Procter & Gamble. I'm going to call it lemon scented because I'm very familiar with this. I'm going to tip it into mop buckets. That's all I'm going to do, which is, depends what you use, but let's say 2 capfuls. You're going to look at it, you're going to go, right, how do I store it? How do I carry it safely to the job? What am I going to carry it in? How am I going to stop it leaking? And then what's going to happen if there is a leak? What's going to happen if I splash it in my eyes? Do I need eye protection? Oh, I'm going to just have goggles for when I tip it. And you need to have just looked through the whole process and gone, what can I do to make it safer? So I now know I have to wear gloves. I don't put concentrated Flash bottles on a wooden surface because we know if there's any residue, it's going to burn through that surface. And it's really thinking through that. So I take it, that your process is now, right, I take it out of my kit. I will only put it in the kitchen sink. I unscrew the lid only after I've filled up the mop bucket. I then tip it in the mop bucket. It's 2 capfuls, and you've got to have the right dilution ratio. So we know it's 2 capfuls to 5 litres, which, by the way, no one seems able to get right. Speaking from experience, 2 capfuls to 5 litres, using my rubber gloves with my goggles on. And then ideally you do a risk assessment and a process for mopping as well, but I'm not going to run through everything today. We've taught this an awful lot, haven't we? We've been teaching this for the last 4 years. This is a basic, if you join the DCBN, there is a really good training video assessment, and you get a certification at the end of this, and it talks through all of this in much better detail with examples and slides. We really go through this in a lot of detail, and it's really good for teaching your staff as well.
Absolutely. And the one thing about doing this risk assessment as well, what I found and certainly when I first started doing them, was actually some products, it made me go, I don't want to use that one.
Have you looked at some of the safety data sheets? Mold spray, Viacal. I was like, so I've got to the stage now with mold spray. Now we live up in Manchester. We get no limescale, but we do get mold. And obviously it's inevitable. You have to use mold spray. I've now got to the stage where I'm like, I can't knowingly, unless we're doing deep cleans and I can put other things in place, I can't give my staff mold spray to use on a routine clean. And so now I've had to say to the customers, you do the mold spray, you want it used, you do the mold spray, we'll come in and clean it off 2 hours afterwards once it's now a lot safer. And we can't work in a room with it there, because the masks that you would have to use, you can't just use your usual normal surgical mask. You need proper masks. We need proper ventilation. And actually, most bathroom windows don't ventilate properly. And doing an assessment, I was just like, I can't safely use this.
No, and I think that's the key. For the cost risk assessment is not just about ticking boxes for compliance. It's about actually deciding whether this is an acceptable risk.
Yeah. And I just found I couldn't guarantee, even if I supplied my staff with masks and you go, okay, yeah, I trained them, I ticked the box, but I know they're not using it. So, in the end, the only way to keep them safe was to stop the usage. It's great fun. Great.
But doesn't there come a point in cleaning where, we have lots of conversations with like this in the groups where that's no longer your job. That's no longer a normal maintenance clean. And is part of this process making that decision as to what you will and won't do, as well as what you will and won't use?
Yeah, I find this one really tricky with mold because, for example, where you live, you get a lot of limescale. If you face mold, you've got a problem, you've got a leak somewhere, you are doing full-on mold removal, and you're probably going to get a special mold removal firm. Well, we've got it every week. And so the reality is, if we don't tackle it, and like lots of people go, don't touch mold, don't touch mold. I'm like, how do we not? Like, it's such a common problem that we have to tackle it. And there's a point where I say, yes, we'll tackle it up to this point. Quick spray, that'll do. If it's any more than that, or if it's not just on your grout, if it's elsewhere, if it's on your ceilings and your walls, no, we're not tackling that.
Yeah.
So yes, but it makes you look at it, doesn't it? And
I think that's the key with risk assessments, is helping you make decisions as to what you will and won't do and what you will and won't use.
I love the training that we do, because risk assessments sound terrifying, because you go, well, what if I do it wrong? And we talk it through, we make it really simple, and there's lots of activities so that by the end of it, you've got loads of sample risk assessments. And actually don't we supply a load of sample risk assessments now, Diane?
We do, yeah. Not the COSH ones, because obviously they're the chemical risk assessments, but the task risk assessments, yeah, we supply those.
So that, you know, you can look through our ones, go, yep, agree with that, yep, agree with that, implement, done. And we basically do your paperwork for you in the DCBN. That's why you should join, isn't it? We'll do your risk assessments. We've done them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Now, okay, professional. Okay, so we're going back to this. Cleaning is a 2-step process. Okay, sounds obvious, doesn't it? But it's really, really hard to implement, I think. So cleaning's a 2-step process. Your first step is cleaning your surfaces. So, you know, cleaning your crumbs off your kitchen surface, you're wiping it all down. Do you need a chemical for this? Potentially not.
No.
You know, there are lots of people that will now clean with microfiber cloths and warm water. So it's cleaning it. And then the second stage is a disinfectant of some type. So it should be a 2-step process. And it's interesting because how many people do a 2-step process?
No, and also I think a lot of chemical manufacturers has kind of convinced us all that we don't need a 2-step process because their product will do both, and some of them will. And also, are we there? Well, some of them will, some of them won't. But I always question, are we there to disinfect somebody's home? Or are we there to clean the surfaces, and do they need disinfecting? So you don't need to disinfect a TV cabinet, for example, but you might want to disinfect a bathroom. So it's, again, I think it's deciding where the line is, maybe.
So, yeah, and I think we've talked about this at length, haven't we? Particularly with other people. So I always find it difficult with customers sometimes when they go, well, what do you use in my, say, bedroom? And I'm going, well, I don't need to use any chemicals. And they're like, what? None? And I'm going, well, no. I'll dry dust. We use microfiber cloths and it's pretty effective. But where I need to, I will use a damp one as well. I'll use glass cleaner if I need it. I've got special cloths where I don't even need glass cleaner.
Yeah.
And they find it shocking that a professional cleaning company wouldn't be disinfecting every surface. And they're like, well, isn't that your job? And I'm like, well, no. And have you read the studies into this, right? So I'm going to go off topic slightly, and it's been a while since I've read these studies, but there has been a massive rise, an increase in childhood diseases like leukemia, like serious diseases, and asthma. And they are linking it now to the sterilization of houses. So we now live in a much more sterile environment. So babies' bottles are getting sterilized all around the house. Everything's sterilized. If you've got a baby, you are anti-backing the life out of everything. And actually what they're seeing is a real link between that sterilization, the lack of exposure to bacteria, and some of these really quite horrible, I say, diseases, problems and things that children are getting that are affecting them a lot later into life because they're not being exposed to pathogens and germs. They're not building up a resistance. And is it affecting their gut microbiome as well?
Absolutely. Wasn't there an element of this post-COVID where we'd all been shut away from other people, and then we all went out, mixed with other people again, and then all these other things other than COVID started getting spread around that we'd not been exposed to for a while?
There were some weird ones, weren't they? Really obscure diseases, childhood diseases that had been died out some time ago, and suddenly we're all getting it. But anyway, right, so back to, do you need to sterilize a house? No, you absolutely don't. Even if I sterilize every single surface in your house, I could go in and fog it with just about, the best disinfectant fluids out there. It's going to be reinfected pretty quickly from the air and everything. Well, maybe not if I fogged it, but, if I was cleaning with your surfaces, it's going to get reinfected. The problem that you've got is if you start disinfecting your surfaces and your disinfectant isn't going to kill absolutely everything. And we talk about the ones that work against viruses, and we'll teach you how to read the back of the packs, and that's all in the training, but I'm not going to go into it now. But let's say it doesn't kill absolutely everything, as most shop bought ones won't. it's going to leave behind the very worst pathogens. It's going to be the really nasty ones that you don't want. And so they are going to sit there and breed with no other competition and reproduce. Breed's the wrong word. They don't breed, reproduce. And so quite sometimes disinfecting can actually do you more harm than good, because we're often getting rid of the good bacteria and leaving a nice open area with plenty of, I'm going to say food, things for them to, nutrients for them to eat, for want of a better word. This is so the wrong words, isn't it? But that makes it really easy to understand.
This is the science bit, folks. Yeah.
The way I'm trying to make it really simple, food for them to eat, with those they don't, and they're going to then be able to reproduce nice and easily with no competition. And this is actually the theory behind some of these. Have you studied the ones, what are they called? I've forgotten the words. The ones where
the probiotic.
Yeah. So the probiotic cleaners, which are being heavily marketed, particularly to people with animals and things like that, the probiotic cleaners, the theory is if you cover a surface with good bacteria, they outcompete the bad bacteria. So it's like your Yakult for your gut. It outcompetes the bad bacteria. Therefore, although your surface is covered in bacteria, right, it's effectively cleaner and safer for you.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you know what? There's a lot of science that backs it up that it is right.
Yes, I found that a hard selling point, if I'm honest, for customers. I'm covering bacteria.
If you find it hard to sell that, I'm just going to use a damp microfiber cloth, no chemicals, but instead change that to, I'm going to cover your house with some really good bacteria.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it works. The science behind it works. And actually, if you are going into it and can explain it, I think it's really, really good. And what people are finding is, is really helping with wounds on pets and things. If you can spray probiotics on it, it's a really good thing. And I tested some probiotic cleaners because obviously we get a lot of mold. And actually, if I sprayed down my shower with the probiotic cleaners, the mold was a bit slower in appearing. It didn't not appear, but it was slower in appearing. So, I just sprayed it, not cleaned it, not scrubbed it at all. So,
So it works to an extent then. Yeah. So that kind of goes back to we're not really there to disinfect people's homes. So this sort of two-step process is the science, but is it the reality?
It should be the reality. A lot of supermarkets sell sanitizers now, which are both cleaner and disinfectant.
Yeah.
The problem is if you don't clean a surface and you spray it, then exactly like we were talking about bleach and limescale the other day, if I just spray over my kitchen surface covered in crumbs, then I remove the crumbs, well, actually, the disinfectant never reached the area under it. So
yeah, you just disinfected the crumbs.
Yeah, I disinfected the crumbs. I removed the crumbs. Great. What's left? And then the other problem that you're going to face is every chemical takes a certain amount of time to work. And again, we cover this. Harpic is my favorite example when teaching this one. We cover this in our, what is it called? The Perfect Bathroom Clean. And that's one of my favorite training videos in the DCBM because it trains you how to train your staff. But anyway, Harpic's a really good example because it has both 2 times on it. It's 10 minutes to clean and 60 minutes to disinfect. And they openly say that on the back of the bottle. And so we talk about dwell time. How long does a product take to work? And even if we talk about your Harpic toilet cleaner, how many of us leave it down there for 10 minutes to work? A lot of people squirt, scrub, flush.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work, did it? What was the point? You are literally tipping that down the toilet. To be fair, this is a 10-minute training session just on Harpic on its own. But so I'm not going to cover that in the podcast today. But so yes, it has to be a 2-step cleaning process. And if you've never done it before, to have to go through and go, I'm a professional now, I do need to follow that. And you go, well, okay, I'm now going to clean the surface and then spray it and then wipe it again. And that's what should be done.
That's the best practice.
That is best practice. Slows you down. But then does it slow you down in the long run? And then we also talk about, if you talk about bathrooms, you need to leave things to soak. So it's a fun one that you're going to have to work it out for whatever your products are, whatever the contact or dwell time is, however long it takes for them to work, you're going to have to work out your own processes. I love it. I love it.
We can tell. Hopefully our listeners are enjoying it.
And then infection control, right? I'm going to give you a test, I am. Okay.
Oh no. Go on.
Colour coding of cloths, right? There is no national standard, to be fair, so you cannot get this wrong, okay? But BICS, the British Institute of Cleaning Science, has 5 colours. Any idea what they are and where they're for? Just while I'm testing you on this.
Just throw that out. You better look it up quickly. So my understanding is it's red for bathrooms, green for kitchens, and I don't know the others because we don't use colour coding.
You don't use colour coding?
We don't use colour coding, no.
What do you think of colour coding in a domestic environment?
I think that's why we don't use colour coding in a domestic environment, because we never transfer a cloth from one room to the other. So we have controls in place. And I'm also, I remember talking to, I'm trying to think, it might have been Denise at BICS about this, where they all then get thrown in the same washing machine at the end of the day. So yeah, so we decided not to use colour coding, but we have strict controls in place that we don't need it.
So I do colour code. I like colour coding. And I think particularly when you've got a team and you're training, it is just best practice. And it just is that little step, because how many of your staff have grabbed a cloth from the bag just as they're leaving, go, I'll just wipe around the door, or I'll just do that. Like I know some of my staff have done that. Well, I want them grabbing a general use cloth, not a bathroom cleaning cloth to do that.
But ours have a bag of dirty cloths, a bag of clean cloths. The dirty cloths just get bagged as they go along. They wouldn't have access to that cloth anymore. It's been bagged up.
Fair enough. Okay, so we had the same, dirty and clean. Right, I'm going to give you the colour codes.
Come on, educate us, please.
Okay, so our blue, this is from BICS. And again, you can use any standard you like. Blue is general or lower risk area. So this is our dusting, really. I've got to say, I think we use green. Anyway, red, washrooms. So yeah, we both agree with that one. Green, general food and bar use.
Yeah, so I thought green was kitchen. So yeah.
So I use blue. Shall I tell you why I use blue? Because our kitchen cleaning chemical is blue, so we match the colour cloth to the chemical.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, the colours wouldn't make sense. So that's why I swapped it round. But again, as long as you teach that colour code, as long as you do the same one, it doesn't matter as much. Then we've got red and white, and that's for your sanitary appliances. So that's for your toilet. That's your high risk area. And then yellow is clinical, like your yellow disposable boxes. Sharps boxes. And then white, this is your 6th one, and we don't use that, is bespoke or site specific. So if you're doing something really unusual, it's in white. But for domestic cleaning, I've never needed that extra one. Or the clinical one, because I don't do anything clinical. So
really, blue, red, green is all that's needed, isn't it? If you're going to use the colour coding.
Wow, it depends. On toilets, do you use a red and white one? Do you use something disposable? I mean, we've talked about this at length on other ones. So there's blue, red, green, and then red and white, depending on your process.
Why would they add white into the mix for cleaning the toilet?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it just looks totally different. Red and white.
Yeah,
it's weird danger.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to me when you've got washrooms are red and then red and white is for the toilet, and you go, oh, well, all the red ones are used in the washroom. You have to make the process super simple, don't you?
Yeah. So cloths, colour coding, and one of the other reasons why we've never gone down the colour coding route is if you're going to do it properly, you need different coloured buckets for different coloured rooms. So you should have a red bucket for a bathroom and a green bucket for a kitchen. So you should have 2 buckets in your cars if you're strictly following colour coding, and you should have different mop handles for each one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One, I don't use buckets, right? There is no bucket.
No, I know you use flat mops, but yeah.
Yeah. So it depends if you're using buckets for your anyway. So we don't use buckets full top. So we use flat mops. And actually this is the benefit of flat mops. You can just rip the head off and stick another one on.
Yeah, but you're meant to use different buckets.
Well, I don't have any buckets.
No, but we do. So we have loop mops and we use buckets. So if we were following colour coding properly, strictly, it would be a red bucket for the bathroom and a green bucket for the kitchen.
But this brings us on to infection control. So if you think about it, the bacteria you're going to face in the kitchen are vastly different to the bacteria you are going to face in the bathroom. And really different to what you're going to face in, say, the bedroom. So, it seems to me that if you're going to use the same mop, well, what do we want? Do we want the bathroom stuff going, into another room, or do we want to do the bathroom last? And in which case, have we done the kitchen and we're taking kitchen muck and where the dogs walk through and then we're mopping the bathroom? Like, which way round are we going to do it? Or do we just swap heads? Like, but I find this really interesting, and I've had to think long and hard about this, because there is the reality. If you are going to use mop and bucket, right, are we going to bring 3 different buckets into a house? And actually, when the customer does their own house, do they really do this? Because I don't think they do. And actually, is the customer going to pay you to, fill up 3 different buckets? We're going to use 3 times as much chemicals. We're barely doing an area. And you go, well, actually, if we counted the whole house, actually, how high risk is a house? I know there's lots of people that are going to be cringing at me saying this, going, no, Louise, teach best practice. And I'm like, yeah, but like, they're not doing best practice. They're walking from one room to another. They are spreading it themselves. Actually, would I have a massive problem if 1 bucket was used, but actually the bathrooms were done last? I think I'd turn a blind eye at a certain point.
Yeah. And we've had this conversation with the guys at Bix, haven't we? They're brilliant, because they really do understand the domestic side is slightly different. And they don't, they say, yes, this is best practice, but there's also an element of practicality to it. So, yeah.
And also, let's face it, in your own house, it's only your own muck, isn't it? It's not like in a public area where, we are facing all kinds of things. Unfortunately, if you had a stomach bug, well, it's probably everywhere anyway.
Yeah, and maybe it goes back to that. We're not there to disinfect people's homes. We're there to clean them to a presentation level, are we? Or are we there to give them a deep clean? It's really difficult.
Are you there to disinfect it? Because I think if you're in a doctor's surgery, then yes, you are.
Absolutely.
But do people really want you to disinfect their houses? And then what's the knock-on long-term health effects of disinfecting their houses? I love this. I could debate this all day with you, Diane. I've got to say, in my own house, so this is different to what I do in my business. In my own house, I've got to say I hardly use any chemicals, because what's the point?
No, we've got septic tanks, so, we're limited on what we can use anyway. So, yeah, there's probably a lot of agitation goes on into the cleaning rather than chemicals. That's my agitation as well as the physical agitation.
Well, most of it will come up with a damp cloth. Like, yeah. I can do most things with, like earlier, my dog, I stupidly let my dog in. It was all muddy. I have a Springer Spaniel. And he shook in the kitchen. I went, oh, what have I done? And every surface was covered in mud splatters. I was like, oh, no. And then you've got to clean it immediately, or it gets even harder. I was like, oh, okay. And then it gets so much worse. And I was down there and I was like, oh, well, I better do my kickboards while I'm down. Oh, I was there for 20 minutes. Meanwhile,
only 20 minutes.
Anyway, what was the point? Why was I saying that? Yeah, damp cloth did the lot. Do we need chemicals? Probably. Maybe with mud I should have done. There's a lot of people that would disagree with a lot of this, and I think it's been a really interesting one. Pre-COVID, we really were moving away from chemicals as an industry and as the UK as a whole. And now COVID came, and obviously there was a real push towards chemicals and disinfectants. And now, I think there was a real push, and we saw the real rise of brands like Fabuloso, which is all about the scents and the perfumes. And a lot of people associate, the heavily perfumed chemicals with clean, which it has no link whatsoever. Then I think, are we moving away from it slightly? I think we're moving towards more natural. We're definitely not moving away from perfumes, from what I'm seeing in the supplies, but we are moving towards more natural products, I think.
And I think maybe, in the industry and in the wider public, are we not looking to chemicals to be the answer? And so many of them are sold as, you just need to spray this and then you never have to clean. It's going to take you 30 seconds. And the reality is, it's not always the chemical, is it? Sometimes it's the process. Sometimes it's the chemical. It's lime scale. You kind of need a chemical. But a lot of the time, like you said, a damp microfiber cloth, there's no chemicals involved at all.
Well, this is the thing. So on the adverts, on the adverts, they have a tiled floor and a muddy dog runs across it.
Yeah.
So they spray whatever they spray, or they use a mop and bucket, whatever. And it all comes up shining, right? First of all, that one, you do not need the chemical. Even if my muddy dog ran across it, I could do it with just I don't know if it depends what it was, but a mop and bucket or whatever. And two, have you seen those shiny tiled floors on the adverts? The only way that's getting that shiny is if you then get a buffer out and
Do it
buff
twice.
afterwards.
Yeah.
I was like, so one, you don't need the chemical, and two, you aren't going to get that shine with the chemical anyway.
No, and actually there was somebody having a debate in one of the groups the other day where a customer had asked them, or demanded, should I say, actually, that they get down on their hands and knees and polish their kitchen floor after they'd mopped it. And that's just like, no, don't sacrifice your knees and your back for money. It's not worth it. And just a flat microfiber mop afterwards, a dry one might fix it. But if they've bought a shiny kitchen floor, then they've bought a shiny kitchen floor that won't always be shiny.
We've got so many of them around us, and yes, I can get them lovely and shiny, but then the answer is you can't walk on it. And I sort of say to customers, well, the moment you walk on it, oh, by the way, you've got kids, so at 4 o'clock, right, good luck with that. They have to do it every night, and the customers do it down on their hands and knees. And I'm, I've got to say, hats off to them. That's a lot of commitment. In my house gets cleaned once a week properly. And then, if we make a mess, yes, I'll clear it up. And yes, I'll clear up after cooking and whatever. But so I'm not going to hoover my house every day. I am not going to mop my kitchen floor every day. Obviously, if my dog runs across it, I will mop the kitchen floor. But
do you think in this business, because we've been in the business a long time, there's so many surfaces that I'm like, nope, we can't have that one because I know how hard it is to keep clean. And we kind of just sort of realised, no shiny kitchen floor. In fact, also not shiny, but I don't want a limestone kitchen floor that's porous either, because I've seen too many of those that have just red wine stains in them. So yeah, do we think that's kind of, we just decide not just what chemicals we want to use, but what surfaces we want in our houses because of what we do?
I think you and I have, well, I'm in the process, I've got a 10-year process of renovating this house, and I'm going through exactly that. I'll tell you, I'm going to ask your thoughts on this. It's not really podcast related, right? So you know how gloss surfaces are a nightmare because obviously they show every fingerprint, right? Then you go to matte surfaces, but as soon as you get any grease on that, it's not coming off. So I don't want gloss, I don't want matte. You can't have handles because they get dirty, but if you don't have handles, they're pushing on it anyway, which show everything. So I'm like, right, handles are out, yet no handles are out. So then you go, all right, natural wood hides everything. Do I go for natural wood, right? And I'm like, but then is it a bit dated? Can we get a more modern look on some natural wood? I don't know. What's your take on this, Diane?
Yeah, we actually, when we replaced our kitchen last, we actually went for a grey handleless, but it had handles in the top, but just handleless, and it was shiny but not gloss.
Okay.
And actually it was brilliant for keeping clean.
Oh,
but
and you
when I first
magnet, don't you?
Yeah, it was brilliant. And we even didn't do a backsplash in our kitchen because I couldn't find one I liked. So we used scrubbable paint, and that was amazing. Our kitchen, when we sold the house 5 years later, that backsplash, it didn't need redecorating. It just been kept clean. Admittedly, we didn't have children in the house at that point, but even splash things at the back of the cooker. Scrubbable paint was brilliant.
So
it's completely off topic.
We went along the same lines. Okay, so we went for acrylic eggshell paint when we painted the whole house the same color. We had feature walls and various other things, but I painted the entire house the same color. And you're right. 6 years later, I've got kids and dogs. They get mucky. All my walls were pristine because I do wipe them down. Contrary to I don't clean, I actually do wipe my walls down.
Wouldn't it be lovely if all our clients had scrubbable paint on the walls and no shiny surfaces and handleless kitchens? But it'd be amazing.
Do you know, I will say it did cost me a small fortune. Like when the paint is nearly £100 a tub and you're getting through 5 tubs, you go, like, was it worth it? 100%. But we couldn't afford to ever redecorate that colour. Like, I was about to say, I'll do the same in this house because, will I do the same? I take that back, actually. I think when I take down my lining paper, I don't know what the plaster's going to be like behind. I might lining paper the whole lot again. So yeah, I probably won't do it. Anyway, I'm going to move on. You don't need to hear about my house decoration. So right, back to the point, right? Professional cleaners. So I hope that anyone that's listened to this, there's been a lot to think about your processes, about actually, are there alternatives to how you think the only way of cleaning is? Are you doing a proper 2-step process? What else we talked about? Safety data sheets. By law, you need a safety data sheet. And have you considered risk assessments? And if you want to make all of this super, super, super easy on yourself, it is all included in the DCBN course. We've basically done a lot of this for you. It's an hour long. Is it an hour long? It's 2 hour long video.
2 hours, yeah.
2 hour long video on all of this, and then you can chat to us about anything you need to put in place. But yeah, this is a must have. It's a lot of work when you do it first time, but once it's done, it's safer for you. You're meeting your legal obligations, and if you've got a team, it's got to be done.
Absolutely. Thanks, Louise.
Thank you, Diane. That was a long one, wasn't it? Thank you.